Today on Christian World News, religious freedom at risk from Asia to Africa and the Middle East, calling out the countries that persecute religious minorities.
And in the Philippines, a pastor with a vibrant ministry to Muslim pays with his life.
Plus, the new film is giving the unborn a voice. We talk with the stars of October Baby about abortion and forgiveness. The United States names the world's worst violators of religious freedom. Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. The new report calls out 16 nations for infringing on religious rights. China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and North Korea are repeat offenders on the annual report from the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Egypt, Nigeria, Iraq, and Pakistan are also named for failing to stop attacks on religious minorities. And this year, Turkey joins the list of the worst offenders. The commission advises the State Department on religious freedom issues. The countries on the list can be subject to sanctions.
And joining us now from Washington is Nina Shea, director of the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute. She also served as a commissioner on the USCRIF for 13 years and just completed her final term a few days ago. Nina, Turkey is a U.S. ally and a member of NATO. Why was it added to the list this time?
Well, it's a new form of persecution that we're seeing. These are governments. This is a government that is very self-conscious of its human rights record. It's a modern government. It doesn't use the more bloody versions of persecution that we see in a place like Saudi Arabia or Sudan. But it uses a whole web, a dense web of restrictive laws and regulations to suppress Christian worship and to prevent people from even worshiping in some cases, and from being able to replicate themselves. There's not a single Christian seminary or higher education facility in the entire country allowed. These minorities, these Christian minorities, all of them are dwindling down to statistical insignificance. Their numbers are very, very low. They comprise 0.15% of the entire population of Turkey. So they are very frail, and we're going to see them vanish in our lifetime if Turkey doesn't lift its dense web of regulations and give them religious freedom.
Now, Saudi Arabia is also on the list. Last week, the top Muslim cleric said all churches should be wiped off the Arabian Peninsula. Why are they so hostile? I mean, they come here and build mosques and schools and neighborhoods. Why are they so hostile to Christians?
Well, Wendy, it's the belief system of the Salafis, or the Wahhabis as they're called in Saudi Arabia. These people have zero tolerance for other religions. And this mufti, the Grand Mufti who said this to destroy all churches, he is basically a cabinet minister in the Saudi government. He is appointed by King Abdullah, and his salary is paid for by the state of Saudi Arabia. They pray on Friday afternoons for the annihilation of infidels, Christians, and Jews. So the muftis in Mecca and Medina. So they have a real serious problem of religious intolerance. And our government is very loath to bring this up. They consider it too sensitive. They are a strategic ally. We buy a lot of oil from them. So we don't speak about it. And one of the only professed Christians who are native to Saudi Arabia, who lives in Saudi Arabia, was arrested this past week. And I've met him.
Wow, it's such a double standard. Well, in Iran, we know Pastor Yusuf Nardakani is facing a death sentence. What should the U.S. government be doing to help him right now?
Well, I think that the President Obama should be using his bully pulpit much more to speak out about religious freedom. Even countries like Iran, who are hostile to the United States, not an ally, tend to hide their worst human rights offenses. You think about the time when Ahmadinejad came to New York, was asked about why they put homosexuals to death, and he denied that they even had any gays in Iran. So they want to hide this, and they don't want to be known as persecutors. So it helps to raise these cases.
Yeah. Now, Egypt has seen a lot of upheaval in the past year. How will that affect the church there? Because there is a significant Christian church there.
Yeah, the Arab Spring is turning into a very bitter cold winter for Christians. And we saw this first happen in Iraq when the Arabist dictatorship secular dictatorship came down, it unleashed a lot of forces to really drive out the Christians. We're very, very worried the same thing is happening in Egypt. We've heard reports that 100,000 Coptic Christians have been driven out so far by terrible violence and the failure of the government and the police and the security to protect them and their churches. In fact, they've turned their guns on the Christians. We saw that at a demonstration for religious freedom by the Coptic Christians last October, when about 24 Christians were killed in cold blood by the police while they were demonstrating against the burning of their churches.
It's unbelievable. Nina, you've just completed your work on the commission. Tell us why this work is so important and where you hope it will go from here.
Well, it's tremendously important that the United States speak out about it. The United States wields a lot of influence in the world with its trade, with its defense. We make a difference. And right now, the bully pulpit has gone silent. We're not hearing about it. When cops were killed in Egypt last October, the President Obama came out and made a statement saying both sides must use restraint, drawing an equivalency between the persecutors and the persecuted. The Christians throughout the Middle East right now are really in a perilous situation.
No doubt about it. Nina Shea, we so appreciate your work, and we hope you'll come back and join us again soon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Look forward.
Protesters in Yemen are demanding justice for Joel Shrum, an American English teacher murdered in the city of Taiz. Al-Qaeda claimed responsibility for the killings and said Shrum was trying to convert Muslims. Meanwhile, the people Shrum devoted his life to teaching are demanding the killers be caught and tried. These young Yemenis say Shrum was gunned down in his car for no good reason. He worked in the Islamic Nation for the past 2 years, teaching poor people English and vocational skills. Hundreds of protesters marched in honor of their teacher, holding posters that said, "We love you, Joel."
The message came all the way from the United States of America, having nothing but good intentions to help and teach people in Taiz. And I believe that he did nothing to be killed for.
But terrorists in the country claimed Shrum was proselytizing and had to be killed. Sunday, 2 gunmen rode alongside his car and opened fire, shooting the 29-year-old dead. Shrum leaves behind his wife and 2 young boys who moved with him to Yemen in 2009.
I just have one question for those terrorists. What did you achieve now? What is your goal now? Are you satisfied? Are you happy? Congratulations.
The United States has condemned the attack, calling it a terrorist act. The gunmen fled the scene and have not been caught.
He was there when we needed their help. And the payoff for that guy was to kill him in that heinous way.
If you'd like to share your prayers and support for the Shrum family, go to our CBN News Facebook page.
Well, the Philippines is a mostly Christian nation, but in the south, Muslim fundamentalists are trying to build an Islamic state.
Asia correspondent Lucille Toulousan brings us the story of one pastor who made the ultimate sacrifice for spreading the gospel.
The island of Mindanao on the southernmost part of the Philippines is predominantly Muslim. Its remotest parts a haven to terrorist groups linked to Al-Qaeda, who carry out terror attacks and kidnappings in the region. Because of the constant threat to security and the Muslims' goal to establish an independent Islamic state, Christians here face intense opposition.
Persecution against Christians is strong in this Muslim city. This year, at least 4 house churches closed down after their pastors and lay leaders were killed by Muslim extremists.
Pastor Mario Asidre was one of those killed. His wife, Mayang, is distraught over her husband's murder. She recalls awakening to the sound of the gunshots that killed Pastor Mario right inside her home.
My husband staggered into our bedroom, and I was shocked because he was full of blood. I brought him to the hospital right away. He was operated on for 8 bullet wounds, but did not survive.
Pastor Mario Asidre was a former Muslim who converted to Christianity. He boldly shared the gospel to his Muslim relatives and neighbors. Despite threats to his life, he was not afraid to hold Bible studies in his home, which he converted into a house church. Witnesses say that just a few hours before he was killed, Pastor Mario agitated some Muslim vendors when he told them he did not believe in the amulets they were trying to sell him. Pastor Edilberto Biera is the coordinator of the Christian and Missionary Alliance Churches of the Philippines in this Muslim region.
I admire Pastor Mario's commitment to the Lord. He tried to share the gospel to the Muslim vendors. This incident triggered threats to other Muslims who converted to Christianity, and that is why the house churches closed down.
But this did not stop Mayang and some believers from going to church. They now worship at the only surviving Christian church in the city.
My neighbors warned me that I should not go out, but I am not afraid because I know Isa, Jesus, is powerful and He will not forsake me. When my husband was still alive, he always told me that we should always be ready to face death for the work of the Lord.
Pastor Biera says his heart is grieved to see pastors come and go in this critical area. That's why he remains, serving faithfully for more than 30 years despite several threats to his own life. Even though church attendance has decreased by 70%, he still believes that the church will still prevail, even if the churches are driven underground.
What we only do is make these people grow in the Lord. We have our prayer and fasting, Bible studies, training. If ever we are out, we are still confident that the work of the Lord will go on. Because that is the promise of the Lord. That when He said, when I will build my church, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. It includes the ministry among the Muslims.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Mindanao, Philippines.
Coming up, the safe haven that's helping Haiti's shattered children.
CWNews.org, your constant news source on the World Wide Web. Find daily updates on the global church. Watch the weekly broadcast.
3 former presidents come together to honor the life and ministry.
Also available in podcast. The in-depth insights into our reporter blogs.
Taliban kidnapped at least 18 South Korean Christians.
Your online news source for complete coverage of the global church.
In our world today, people say there are many paths to God because all religions are basically the same. Nothing could be further from the truth. Not all paths lead to the top of the mountain. While other religions require you to somehow work your way to heaven, the Christian faith is unique. Instead of us searching for God, we know that Jesus has been searching for us. He has completed the work needed for you to spend eternity with Him.
In The Quest for God, Gordon Robertson shows how you can overcome guilt, hear from God, and understand His plan for your life. Plus, learn what sets Christianity apart from all other religions. This powerful tool can help you share the gospel with those you care about the most.
I want you to enjoy the security that comes from knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have favor with God forever.
The Quest for God, available now.
I love Gordon's style of teaching. He is very transparent in the examples that he gives.
It really encouraged me to seek even more for God, to desire more of a relationship with Him.
The more you know about God, the more you know about Jesus, the more grace and peace you're going to get.
The teaching has helped me see how much God loves His children and wants to bless them and to bless others around them.
Everybody needs to watch this DVD.
Hard to believe it's been 2 years after Haiti's devastating earthquake. Hundreds of thousands of people, though, are still living in tent cities.
But many amputees and other victims are finding new life in a new place. Stan Jeter reports on what's known as the Miracle Village.
He lost his right leg during Haiti's powerful 2010 earthquake. But Fritz is now rebuilding his life in Miracle Village, a self-sustaining settlement for amputees and other earthquake survivors.
Onion, provo, beans. He's got everything. He's got it.
The village is the latest project by Florida pastors Bobby and Sherry Burnett, who moved to Haiti 20 years ago. They founded the Love a Child Center and began taking in orphans and running a school. But when the earthquake shook Haiti's capital, they couldn't ignore the dead and wounded filling the streets of Port-au-Prince.
And then the very next morning, Sher and I was going down into Port-au-Prince with our trucks, with our staff, picking people off the streets.
The Burnetts quickly converted their orphanage into a clinic. Hundreds of foreign doctors and medical personnel arrived to treat the wounded who had flooded the grounds.
Because they've heard that this is the place where they're going to get care. We know that people who suffer horrible tragedies need peace and quiet and love, okay, and support. And it's not just medicines, okay, it's for the soul as well. And if we look around, somebody last night came when they brought 50 patients last night. They said this looks like an oasis in the desert.
One patient was 2-year-old Marie-Ange. Her older sister was cooking when the quake hit. She grabbed the child and began to run.
My heart was beating so fast. I heard a lot of noise.
Sherry Burnett remembers what happened next.
With the earthquake shaking violently under her feet and everything growing dark, the baby, Marie-Ange, flew out of her arms and landed right in that pot of boiling water.
After I saw her burned face, I was scared. I was really, really scared.
For Francimem, her mother, tragedy followed tragedy. Her husband, a construction worker, died in the quake. Her house was destroyed, and now her daughter might not survive. A friend took Francimem to the Love a Child Hospital. They sent Marie-Ange to a shipboard operating room for skin grafts. Then they gave Francimem and her children a place to stay, along with hundreds more, on orphanage property. But tents might not protect them during hurricane season. So just months after the quake, Love a Child staff and volunteers began clearing 62 acres to build an entire village of permanent homes.
But we're building 50 houses here. 3 pads have been put in today and yesterday, building it to a Florida hurricane code so that it doesn't blow away. Ground's termite pre-treated. The lumber that's going in has a different chemical for pre-treatment, so we're really happy and confident that these are going to last a long time.
The first houses went to amputees, and over the next 2 years, 400 more have been built. Today, 3,000 refugees live in their own houses in Miracle Village. Francimem and her family now live in a safe home and a loving community. They have playgrounds, basketball courts, a 24-hour medical clinic, and schools, along with the orphanage. Every family cultivates a garden plot to grow food for their families and extra food to sell at market. Future projects include a church and a public marketplace where residents can sell their crafts and produce, turning Miracle Village into just that, a miracle for hundreds of families that survived Haiti's killer earthquake. Stan Jeter, CBN News.
Still to come, October Baby hits the big screen this weekend. We'll look at the new film and why the Christian community is embracing its message.
We asked CBN.com users how we could make our website easier to use, and we listened.
This is really easy to read and move through.
The information opens up a whole lot quicker.
Yeah, it's much faster.
There's everything I'm interested in right here. The click of a mouse.
The new CBN.com has been redesigned, making it faster to find your favorite 700 Club stories, musical guests, our online community, and special features.
Anyone can enjoy this new site.
Visit the new CBN.com today.
From the ancient Greeks and Mayas to the world religions of today, millions of people have been on a quest for God. But from the very beginning of time, God has been searching for you.
Jesus says, I'll do it for you. I'll come to you. You won't have to come to me. I'm going to come to you.
In this new DVD, The Quest for God, Gordon Robertson shows you how to hear from God and find His unique plan for your life.
So it's more than just looking at Him in a book or hearing about Him from somebody else. He wants to have a direct relationship with you.
Plus, learn what sets Christianity apart from all other religions.
It's by grace, the free, unmerited grace of God. He is able to present you spotless in His presence with exceeding joy.
Get The Quest for God. Available now.
In our world today, people say there are many paths to God because all religions are basically the same. Nothing could be further from the truth. Not all paths lead to the top of the mountain.
In the quest for God, Gordon Robertson shows how you can overcome guilt, hear from God, and understand His plan for your life. Plus, learn what sets Christianity apart from all other religions. The Quest for God, available now.
For every 250,000 to 1 million people in Africa, there is one surgeon, one. And so from a young age, Dr. David Thompson made a vow to be a surgeon on call in Africa, even if he were the only one.
Dr. David Thompson is the founder of the Pan-African Academy of Christian Surgeons and runs a hospital in Gabon, Africa. He grew up in Cambodia, where his parents were missionaries. He was just 14 years old when he felt God's call to become a doctor.
I saw a man die, and he died for lack of basic medical care. My father tried to talk to him about the Lord, and he said to my father, "Don't tell me about your God, just help me." And from that moment on, I determined that I wanted to help people so that I could talk to them about God.
Over the years, Dr. Thompson worked to put that determination into action. And today, his organization trains surgeons to fill the incredible need in Africa. At the hospital, the doctors, along with the staff and volunteers, are meeting their patients' physical and spiritual needs.
And Dr. David Thompson joins us now. Thank you so much for being here. Your parents were actually killed on the mission field, but that didn't stop you from wanting to become a missionary as well. Why was that?
I was in college studying to become a doctor, and when I heard the news that they'd been killed in Vietnam, and I was very angry at God, and I wanted to know why. And during that whole time of crying out to God, God spoke to me. First time in my life, I was really kind of shocked, and God just challenged me to trust Him. And I didn't want to trust Him. I felt that He owed me an explanation. But God took me through that in the next few hours, and I really did then entrust myself to God without understanding why. That really was, for me, the beginning of a tremendous adventure of walking with God.
You obviously heard the voice of God call you into this ministry. What is the challenge when it comes to recruiting surgeons to do what you do?
Well, it's a big challenge because it means kind of throwing yourself on God's grace for your profession, walking away from all kinds of money and resources and recognition of your colleagues and say, I'm just going to trust God for this. And taking your family to a strange part of the world where, there's all kinds of assumed dangers and diseases and so forth, and education becomes an issue for your children. So it is a big moment it really is a crisis of faith for anybody who decides to do it. Well, I told the story about this young woman, and there are many similar ones too. People who are coming out of all kinds of spiritual problems, because as children, their parents invite spirits to come into them. It's just really serious problems that come as a result of that.
Indeed.
And how God delivers them from that. People who are at their wits' end for something as simple as a hernia or gallbladder disease. They can't get anybody to operate. Children with hydrocephalus, we can put shunts in for them, and we treat the poor. And those are the people that are kind of marginalized in all these countries.
Absolutely. Dr. David Thompson, thank you so much for your time, and our prayers and blessings to you for the work you do.
Thank you.
And to see more great stories about the work of the church around the globe, visit our Christian World News webpage. You can find it at cwnews.org. We'll be right back.
In our world today, people say there are many paths to God because all religions are basically the same. Nothing could be further from the truth. Not all paths lead to the top of the mountain. While other religions require you to somehow work your way to heaven, the Christian faith is unique. Instead of us searching for God, we know that Jesus has been searching for us. He has completed the work needed for you to spend eternity with Him.
In the quest for God, Gordon Robertson shows how you can overcome guilt, hear from God, and understand His plan for your life. Plus, learn what sets Christianity apart from all other religions. This powerful tool can help you share the gospel with those you care about the most.
I want you to enjoy the security that comes from knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have favor with God forever.
The Quest for God, available now.
I love Gordon's style of teaching. He is very transparent in the examples that he gives.
It really encouraged me to seek even more for God, to desire more of a relationship with Him.
The more you know about God, the more you know about Jesus, the more grace and peace you're going to get.
The teaching has helped me see how much God loves His children and wants to bless them and to bless others around them.
Everybody needs to watch this DVD.
Christian World News, your window to the global church. For stories of revival,
another revival,
persecution,
funeral, relatives and fellow Christians mourn here.
The first country over the international date
I'm
line.
Coach Thomas in Baghdad, and coming up on the broadcast, an exclusive interview.
and the impact of Christian leaders. Watch Christian World News.
A new movie is making a buzz in the Christian community. It's called October Baby. It's inspired by the true story of a young girl who survives an abortion and later goes on a search for her birth mother.
October Baby is the story of Hannah, a 19-year-old girl, and she learns that she is adopted and was never told because she's a survivor of an abortion.
This is my only chance to find out who I really am.
I just wanted you to know I think it's really brave.
John and his brother Andrew have their background in music videos, but felt compelled to make October Baby, their first feature film.
October Baby is inspired by a true story, which is the story of Gianna Jessen, who is an abortion survivor.
To be able
When
to...
I heard her speak for the first time, she's since become a very dear friend, I was shattered. I didn't know that there was such a thing as abortion survivors, and I so was captivated by the issue, I felt like we had to do something about it.
October Baby is definitely a movie where you do laugh and you do cry. We wanted you to laugh as hard as you cried, to catch your breath in those moments, because it's such a heavy issue that it needed to be a charming coming-of-age love story.
The movie stars newcomer Rachel Hendricks as Hannah and John Schneider as Hannah's father. Sherry Rigby plays Hannah's birth mother, a role that hits very close to home for the actress who herself had an abortion.
I read this script and I was sitting there and really reading something that paralleled my life. And at that very moment I realized that God was weaving this tapestry of my life, over these last 20 years, and how beautiful that looked and the promise of that.
One of the more emotional moments is when Hannah finally finds her birth mother.
I guess I came here because I hope that meant something to you.
Rigby says God used the role to bring emotional healing from her own abortion.
And He gave me that complete forgiveness. He met me, so to speak, at the well, and He gave me the love and grace, and to really understand forgiveness and to say, it's okay.
The Irwin brothers say their biggest hope is that the movie will make people really think about the issue of life.
And I hope that people going to see this movie will, that it will change the way people think about life.
The movie debuts in select theaters this weekend. It was great. I saw it. Have you seen it yet?
Not yet. Looks very powerful.
Well, it's in theaters this weekend.
We'll be watching. That is going to do it for our show this week. Thanks so much for joining us.
Until next week, from all of us here at Christian World News, goodbye and God bless you.